And I know what you're thinking, Nick, you don't be recording enough. I'm gonna be real with you guys. When I take y'all with me, I'm probably like 300% slower. Cause I only have one hand and I'm kinda old, I ain't got time. So, I do a little here and there in the evening, and then, when it's finished, I'll talk about it. Cause you never know. You have to finish something and use it before you really know. So, first thing I did was, one of the first things I did was rip my instrument cluster out. I ripped my instrument cluster. I had a piece of aluminum, and I cut that piece of aluminum the exact size of my my instrument cluster. And I already had 2 gauges. Now I have a total of 8 in a little space big enough for like those little tiny holly screens. So I did an instrument cluster. And I'm not mad that I did that instrument cluster. I added some switches to some existing stuff, and I changed some stuff around. One of them is everything's on a relay now. You hear a lot of old school dudes talking about how your fans and your fuel pumps would be much more powerful if you had like a ground that was short right to the body and you didn't have a wire. Well, and you had a thicker wire. Well, those guys are right. I had the stock Volvo power wire and ground used to trigger my inline pump for my fuel cell. That's what I did for a while. And I had it set. I have a adjustable fuel pressure regulator. I set the fuel pressure somewhere around 35. I added a swirl pot, a relay for a fan, but the relay triggers both my fuel pumps.
Turn it back
I have a pump now that picks up to the swirl pot, and one goes from the swirl pot to the rail. Now, when I did all that, I shortened the wires, and like I said, I used a relay and a ground trigger for a relay, and
turn it off.
Like a 60 amp fuse. So they are running way more powerful. My fuel pressure went from 35 to about 65. So I had to readjust it. It was that much more powerful. It sounds like a pack of bees are in my trunk. It sounded like I kidnapped somebody's drone while it's in mid-flight and just threw it in my trunk, closed the trunk, and just tried to drive off. It's so noisy. But I guess if you're into sports cars with loud exhaust and stuff like that, when I'm in the car, not really noisy. But I'm telling you, standing at the back of that car, you hear it humming. So that's one thing I did. I have a swirl pot, fuel pressure, a swirl pot, and another pump, and all the fuel that I'm ever going to need in that car, or at least for a very, very long time. I added the same relay that's made for a fan that I used, because they're like heavy duty. So I used the same heavy duty relay made by Volvo, and I used it for my fan. I have little clips for everything I'm talking about, but the fan, yet again, just like the fuel pumps, became extremely powerful. The ground was always okay because it wasn't very long, but it wasn't a thick wire. It wasn't a thick wire, and it was probably longer than it should be. So the fan worked adequately for what I'm doing. But when I switched over to a relay, man, I'm telling you, it's a vortex. People say a lot of stuff about my styling of car, but common sense to tell you, pressing air through your square grill on a Volvo creates a pocket of pressure. It got to go somewhere. Most of the time it goes down. Doesn't really help your car. If you cut holes in your hood, yeah, it helps let out heat because heat rises and will get out the holes and create its own vacuum just sitting still. But if you have if you have those holes, regardless of heat, they will let the air out. And when I'm sitting still, turning on the fan, you'll see from the clip. Man, like I said, it's a vortex. So I did a new instrument cluster. I made everything on ground trigger so I don't have to catch my car on fire. I have a swirl pot. Oh, and I have an expansion tank from Jusumoto, whoever they are. I feel like a lot of their products are for bikes, but I didn't care. You own a Volvo, you know that the expansion tanks are made of plastic. And the car is old. The one was shot on the red wagon. And I'm going to get to the red wagon in a second. So I wanted a metal one. I wanted an aluminum one. So I got one. It fit pretty good. Here's another clip of that. I have no problem. The only thing is it has a 1.1 bar cap. I want a 1.3. You know, get a little more pressure for when I add the boost to the motor. And yeah, so that's what I'm going to do. So that's pretty much button up. I've driven the car around the block. I should have took y'all to do that. That wasn't that hard. You know, the only thing I needed was power steering. So let's move on to the next thing. The red wagon. Okay. The red wagon threw a rod or something wrong with a wrist pin in the piston, but it has too much friction when I spent it over. When I was doing the head gasket change, when it initially broke because I had water coming out the exhaust, I put a head gasket on because I had one already on deck. They don't cost that much anyway. Yeah. It sounded better, but it still didn't crank. So when I took the head off, I was like, let me turn it off. Because, you know, most of the time you don't mess with turning the crank over with the head off because you don't want to mess with your timing. But in this case, I didn't care. And I tried to turn it over and it had too much friction. So that means the motor that was going to go in the tan car, that 351 Windsor that I have in the building, it only needs a couple of more things, and I'm going to prime it, and then I'm mocking it up. I have already pulled the motor out the red wagon. The red wagon is a rolling chassis now, so hopefully within the next couple of months I get an oil pump, prime it, put the oil pan on, look for me a bell housing. I got a laser level thing that will help me align it with the rear axle, and that's where that motor's going. Now, I wanted to make that a dedicated drag car, and in the world of LS, LT, Hemi-powered things, I get it. 351. My 351 is going to have a standalone ECU. It has a Holley high ram. Half of it's up there. And yeah, Terminator X, ECU, Holley high ram, and a big GT40 goofy cheap turbo, like right over there. Now, this will make my car fast enough to drag race certain people, but it will not make my car as far into the horsepower speed realm as these other cars. I know that. It's okay. I've seen Brodix blocks out there that will get me into that area, but just for fun, for now, I'm taking everything that was going to go in that tan car, and I'm just going to put it towards the red car because it's the car that's not running. And the tan car will be the car that gets a LS. It'll get an LS first. I wanted it to go in that red car, but priorities. The car that breaks is the car I'm going to fix. The car that has it's the car with no motor right now. So I'm going to put that motor in, and it's still going to be a drag car. I'll be able to, you seen my bash bar from hell tow hitch. I'll be able to tow whatever. It'll be powerful enough to tow. I mean, I have the biggest stock truck, well, RV cam you can get. I went a cheaper route with my motor. Instead of going all roller everything, I just decided to keep it stockish cam so I could keep the springs and and I don't have the same rollers. It's just all the stock rocker arms, hydraulic, flat tappet lifters, and so it's still the same setup. I did not convert it over to roller. So it won't be high RPM, but it should be able to tow a car awesome. It should be able to do a hell of a burner. Compared to a lot of cars, the 600 horsepower Volkswagen, 600 horsepower Volvo wagon isn't as heavy as a Hellcat coupe. So you're going to be probably shocked at what 500-600 will do in this car. But that'll be its limit for now. And I have future plans, but we'll go over that bridge when we got to. But that's my latest update. Aluminum overflow, swirl pot, 2 fuel pumps, all the fuel now. No more hot wires. Everything's running on relay. And I have an instrument cluster that does not look like the stock one. So that's where we at. I did a lot of support. People don't like support mods. No one's amped about, ooh, you used a high capacity kind of relay for a few pumps. No one really cares. Maybe some drift guys are like, ooh, you went with a sick relay for that. Should last long enough. You know, people don't care about that. The swirl pot doesn't add horsepower. Some people don't care about that. That's why I didn't really film much of it, just a few little clips. But this video long enough. I should have added enough stuff beside my big ass head for you to get it, you know? So like, share, subscribe, follow. I mean, I'm probably the most hated Volvo. People try to say I'm not, but I'm pretty sure I am. And I'm okay with that. You know what I'm saying? I'm out. You gotta turn it off. Look at my hands. Look